All right, guys, beside me today is a 2018 Ford Focus SEL. Now, they don't make the Ford Focus anymore. 2018 was the last year for the Mark IV Focus in the United States, but in Europe, they do have the Mark V Focus, which basically looks like a little baby Ford Escape. Now, there's numerous reasons why the Ford Focus was canceled in the United States: the adoption and more popularity of crossover SUVs, and the fact that this thing had an absolutely controversial transmission attached to the motor of this vehicle. But today I'm going to be going over everything, and I kind of want to make this video about if you should or should not buy the Ford Focus. Prices on these are pretty low, and if you're looking for a first car, this may or may not be one of the best options you have. All right, starting on the exterior of the Ford Focus, I will say it looks pretty plain. It's just, this is the hatchback version. You could get it in a four-door sedan, but the exterior of this car is very plain. You have these rims that come on the SEL. They're just regular 17-inch rims sitting on these Continental tires. You do have LED stripes in the headlights for the daytime running lights. And that's something you get when you upgrade to the SEL trim of the Ford Focus. Along with that, if you go on the SE and above, you do get painted mirror caps as well. If you go for the S level, you get molded in color door handles. You don't get the turn signal on the mirror housing, and you get a molded in color mirror cap. And like I said, this is the hatchback. It looks decently sporty for how cheap this thing is, and it actually is decently quick. And I do like how they integrated the gas cap into kind of the shape of the rear taillights. Not much to say about the exterior of this car. Now, as for storage space in the back, one second. As for storage space in the back, with the seats up, you get 23.8 cubic feet of cargo room, and with the seats down, you get 44.8 cubic feet of cargo room. You also get this cargo cover back here, and they also have the floor mats back here. You also see you have your Sony subwoofer in the rear of this as well. This does have a Sony audio system connected to the Sync 3 system. But yeah, guys, that is basically the exterior of the Ford Focus SEL. There's not much to talk about. And this thing is pretty small, not very long. Wheelbase is very short. So yeah, let's move on to the interior. That's really where this car starts to make sense for being this hatchback. And then after the interior, we'll go over the engine and some of the reasons why the Ford Focus kind of failed towards the end of its lifespan. But yeah, let's hop on the inside. All right, so let's start the car up. It's 102 degrees outside. Whew. All right, so sitting on the interior of the Ford Focus, I will say this thing is not so big. I haven't sat in one of these for a really long time. I actually used to own a Ford Focus. That was my first car I ever got. It was a Ford Focus SE sedan. Starting in the front, you just have your standard gauge cluster, tachometer, speedometer, and you got this little screen in the middle. This one, surprisingly, the SEL doesn't even have TPMS, so you can't see your tire pressure without getting an actual tire pressure monitor, going to all four wheels and sticking around and trying to read your tire pressure. But you do get a cool little card thing on here which shows which doors are open if the tailgate's open, so that's pretty cool. Steering wheel's pretty normal. It is leather wrapped, and this one is heated, and then you have your cruise control settings, your wiper stock, and everything like that. So nothing special about basically anything going on right here. You have Sync 3 in the center. Pretty good infotainment system. Ford still uses it, but Ford is starting to make a larger transition over to Sync 4. Like I said, this has a Sony audio system. Pretty decent. Not as good as the Bang & Olufsen system Ford has been using in their vehicles. This one has the cold weather package on it, which, like I said, gives you the heated steering wheel and the two heated front seats. Even though they are cloth, I actually don't think the seats are super comfortable, but again, this is an economy hatchback, so the seats aren't going to be super comfortable. What's surprising is the amount of bolstering they have on the side. We were going around corners in this thing, and it was actually holding us pretty well. But you also get dual zone climate control. And then as for power plugs and everything, you have a USB Type A down here in this little storage area down here, a 12-volt socket right here, and that's for the center console. Not very big, actually pretty small. In the center console, you get a USB Type A and another 12-volt socket. And for the glove compartment, you don't really get much in the way of space, but whatever you're holding in here, it can definitely fit. Now, as for the transmission, we will go over this more in depth, but this is the 6DC T250, which many of you know if you've ever looked into Focuses. Had many problems in the Ford Focus's lifespan, and yeah, we'll go over more about that. As for like quality of materials, the dash is squidgy. But as for like the armrest right here, and like I said, economy hatchback, so not that big of a deal. You do get like this cloth material here that isn't super uncomfortable to place your elbow on, but when you go up, you start feeling these cheaper materials. And then the cup holders, they're pretty deep, and if you ever want to fit a smaller style drink, you have this thing in here, you just flip it upside down, drop it in, and there you go, you have a shorter cup holder now. This also has a power moonroof. All you do is open this, and you have a button up here to open the moonroof electronically, and then you have your sunglasses holder up here, of course. So, you know, pretty standard upfront interior, nothing much different. The owner, the previous owner of this vehicle actually put in these all-weather floor mats. Were actually really nice for slipping your foot on and off the gas pedal, because the carpet kind of creates friction, so you can take your foot off the gas pedal without having to, like, you know, lift it up. You can just slide it back, which is really nice. So the all-weather floor mats I really like. Now we can move on to the back of the vehicle, which is a fun little adventure. All right, so just like I remember when I owned a Ford Focus, this vehicle, super scrunchy in the back. You technically can fit a third person back here. You wouldn't want to because there's absolutely no space. And on a hot day like this, you're not going to be getting much airflow because there are no vents back here for the climate. But what's surprising is, you know, you don't get really any material back here that's nice. A lot of it is cheaper plastics. But you do get a little bit of an armrest over here that you can rest your arm on. Knee room, you probably have 3-4 inches back here, so it's not terrible. And the driver's seat is where I would be sitting, so it's not awful. You just do get to feel a little claustrophobic just because the roof line, when it slopes, if you're sitting all the way up, my back of my head is actually barely touching the roof line, so it can start to feel a little claustrophobic. Let's see if the windows go all the way down to fix that problem. They do not. So the windows don't even go all the way down, so that doesn't really fix your claustrophobia issue. And as for the middle seat, like I said, no room at all. I'm basically scrunched, blocking the seatbelt buckles for the other two passengers back here. So not much room. You get a little cup holder in the door, and you don't get a center armrest. So if you were on a road trip, which I've taken a Ford Focus on a road trip, we actually had the other person literally taking up the entire back seat. The front seats are fine and dandy and have plenty of room, but the back seats, you know, they're just a little bit cramped. You know what I'm saying? Then let's move on to the engine outside. We talk about some of the powertrain options for this. So you could either get a 3-cylinder, you could get a 4-cylinder. This one is equipped with a 2-liter 4-cylinder, naturally aspirated. And so that 4-cylinder makes 160 horsepower and 146 pound-feet of torque. Which is not much, but this car actually feels decently quick on the road because it is so light and there's not much to move around. Now, so incredibly hot. Now that the hood's open, what's crazy is you can actually see your coil packs on the top. I never noticed that when I was driving my Ford Focus, how exposed the engine is. But yeah, so this is a 2-liter 4-cylinder, making 164 horsepower and 146 pound-feet of torque. Now, it's not the engine that was bad. This 2-liter is actually, you know, still used in the Ford EcoSport on the upgraded trim level, like the SES or the Titanium. It was the transmission that was mated to this engine that was the issue, and this transmission is still being used in the EcoSport. So like I said, the 6DCT250 power shift, 6-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission. Ford had a lot of issues and went through a massive lawsuit when it came to this transmission. Cars that were brand new, owners complained about jerking, they complained about bucking, hard launches, not upshifting, the car being shifted into neutral by itself and losing power. Now, Ford claimed that that was due to, you know, maybe the rear main seal leaking onto the clutch, so the clutch would slip, and maybe the input shaft had issues, or the throttle bearing would have issues. But it has been known that there was really no configurable way to build and connect this transmission to this car. Now, it was a recall, so anytime you do have an issue with this car, I always got my repairs done for free. I never had to pay to get my transmission repaired. My issues were more with the transmission control module when it came to my Ford Focus. And we haven't had really any issues driving this. We've probably put about 25, 30 miles on this vehicle. Haven't had any issues. Maybe a little bit. When you're driving this, it seems like the car revs up a little too high before shifting. It's shifting at like 3,000 RPMs. But I do remember from my Ford Focus that being a thing too. It just takes a while to upshift or downshift. All right, so why don't we take it for a drive? All right, so driving the Ford Focus SEL. Now, I said this is a pretty quick car. I did not say fast. Don't misquote me. I said quick. You put your foot down. It does it pretty good at downshifting pretty quickly. It doesn't take too much time to kick down. It revs up to about 4,500 RPMs before the transmission finally just lets it go and upshifts for you. So throttle response is decently okay, and you have a sport mode in this. You put it in sport mode, throttle response gets a little lighter, so you're able to speed up more quickly. And if you wanted to shift it yourself, you also have the ability, you have 2 buttons on the side of the gear selector down here for upshifting and downshifting. But honestly, I don't think those buttons for this car have ever been used, and I think many Ford Focus owners probably don't ever touch the up and downshift buttons for their vehicles. Now, when you start getting up to a higher speed here, body roll on this kind of car, the suspension's not going to be the best at mitigating stuff like that. So it's not like you are, it's not like you should be expecting to get a lot of performance out of this, other than the fact that it is just a quick little economy car. As for visibility, seeing out every way of this car is pretty easy. The hatchback makes it even easier with that basically high raking window that just curves up a little bit. Windshield is really big, and the mirrors are a decent size as well, even though I haven't adjusted them, so I really can't see what's going on the side of me. Now, before used car prices were hiked up to oblivion, you probably could have picked one of these up for about $13,000 to $15,000. And if you're going to be buying a Ford Focus, maybe wait until this kind of fiasco with the used cars is gone. That way you can pick one of these up for a lower price. Now, do I ever think they'll bring the Mark V Focus to America? Well, gas prices are rising pretty rapidly. I remember a year ago, what was going on in the Middle East, you could pick up a gallon of gas here, and a premium gas, 91 for $1.90 in Las Vegas. West Coast, which is expensive. So, and now for premium, you're paying about $4.10 a gallon if you go to like a Chevron, $4.20 if you're going to a Chevron. So gas prices going up. Economy cars are going to start needing to make a comeback. So we might see it wouldn't surprise me if we saw a reintroduction of the Ford Focus back into the U.S. market within the next 3 to 5 years. Which is, the Mark V Focus is a nice vehicle, and I don't believe it uses the 6-speed dual clutch anymore. And in Europe, you can get about every trim level in a 6-speed or 5-speed manual if you wanted to. So that is the Ford Focus SEL. Though it is pretty boring and doesn't inspire a lot of confidence, the Ford Focus managed to sell well throughout the years, and other than the dodgy gearbox, it was a good and affordable car. If you can look past the transmission, I would recommend purchasing one, especially in the ST or RS variants, because those are super fun hot hatchbacks, but you'll be paying a little more for those. If you liked the video, smash the like button down below, and if you want to see more from us, go ahead and subscribe to see more content like this. You won't regret it. I'll see you all in the next video.